Give thanks and praise.
Yes, give Ankhs and praise.
All right. Ankh.
Ankh and Ma'at family, we are live. We are live
Give
with
thanks.
Sesh Nasut Sanjeti and everyone's favorite, who we love so much, Baba Haru Ankh Ras Imaj Se Patah. Tuesday Talk family, you know what? Sanjeti and Baba Haru are two of my favorite people in the Kemetic community. You know why? Because they are so forthgiving with the knowledge that they have. And it's so much fun to just sit and listen and learn and absorb and be a little bit overwhelmed with all of the information that they have and that they share. And I just love it. And it's one of the reasons that I started Tuesday Talk, because I wanted to be around those people who knew all of this information and who share. As you're coming in, you know the drill. Let us know where you are and where you're coming in from so we can see and understand and appreciate the reach that we have with Tuesday Talk and how this information is being disseminated to those of us who need it. And that's all of us, right? Everyone should have this information. Tonight, we are going to be discussing the 42 laws of Ma'at. And we have our shrine elder, who is everyone's elder in this legacy, who also gave us another set of 42 to help us use these in our modern times, okay, based upon the same principles, but being able to be used for modern times. And we have Seshnasut Sanjeti, Scribe Sanjeti. So those of you who know him know we're going to get some Medu Neter tonight. Tonight is going to be very powerful. One of the things that I ask everyone in the Tuesday Talk listening realm is to make sure that you support and financially support people who are the best out here in their respective space. Okay. And years from now, you're going to realize who you had on Tuesday Talk. We need to support people who are doing this work today so that we can continue to do it tomorrow. Throughout tonight, Baba Haru's Cash App will be posted, Sanjeti's Cash App will be posted, and we want to make sure that you show your love and appreciation in a monetary way. Okay, we do it for everybody else. And we have to make sure that we understand it's important to do that for ourselves, and more important to do that for ourselves so that we can, through collective work, recreate our and benefit from our financial prowess, because we are a strong financial prowess base. If we weren't, we wouldn't see businesses in our communities. Okay. So I just want to put that bug in your ear. We all have a responsibility to see this grow. Okay. And with these two people, does it get any better, people? Come on. It does not. All right. Let's see where everybody is checking in from with that preposition at the end. My mom was an English teacher, so I'm committing a little grammar fraction. Bob is getting a call. We've got Sakina Ra in
Mañana,
Detroit right
mañana,
now.
señor.
Baba has a call.
Just leave that alone. Tomorrow, on your way in, bring it back, okay?
Let me mute him.
Yeah, bring those tomorrow on your way in, okay?
Sorry. I'm trying to mute Baba so we can have some privacy on the phone.
And what?
I don't know how to do that.
Oh, yeah. A half an inch longer. Yeah, and as wide as the other.
There we go. So Baba can have a little privacy when he's on the phone. So we are checking in to see where the family is tonight. And looks like Baba is back. So let me unmute Baba. 1 second, Baba. I'm going to unmute you. Unmute. Baba, you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Baba is back. So we know Baba is in the studio that is in Chinatown in New York City. We have Nahesi 999 in Las Vegas. Shahid Douglas, Uncle Seneb to you. Sandra is in New York. Sandra or Sandra is right here in New York City. Pam Smith is in Massachusetts. We've got Jason in Lincoln, Nebraska. This is awesome, you guys. Ankh Curtis, member of the Shrine. He's from Jackson, from Painesville via Pittsburgh. Tahuti Films, Ankh. All right, we have a lot of people here. I see Chicago's in the house. Ankh Baba, everybody's showing you some love. Thank you for joining us for Tuesday Talk today. I'm so excited to have these two. The synergy of working with Baba Haru and Scribe Sanjeti is just amazing. But Baba, we want to talk to you first. We want to just hear what you have to say about the 42 laws of Ma'at and why it's so important that we know the 42, that we live the 42, and that we eventually and ultimately embody the 42. What are the 42 laws of Ma'at, and why was it important for you to give us this new covenant of the 42 laws of Ma'at?
Well, first and foremost, Dua Untura, Ankh Ma'at to everyone. As you know, the reclamation of this culture is not exactly a walk in the park because it demands that we align ourselves not just with the information, but with applying the information into a practice. I remember when I first started, I got a lot of pushback for seeking to restart up this energy of Ma'at again. They thought that it was just enough to go to lectures and have these feel-good moments about our belongership to the culture of ancient Egypt, as they called it. But I realized that if you're going to put what your ancestors left into practice, the first thing you're required to do in the reclamation of this spiritual sacred science is to gird yourself by reclaiming the confessions of Ma'at, because this is the ethical code by which our ancestors lived. And so there were many of them scattered in different papyri throughout our story. But the one that comes down most to us today is the papyrus of Anui, also called Ani. And those 42 confessions is an ancestral gift that we do not touch. We do not disturb them. They remain inviolate. And we also claim those 42. But since we have been our culture has been turned around here in Amenta, the West, we have acquired some bad habits, I would say, from those who have enslaved our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And we have flirted with ancestral treason by not recognizing that we had a culture long before another one was imposed upon us by the people of the ice and sand. And so, realizing this, as the keeper of the elder shrine here in Amenta, the Shrine of Ptah, which has been established over 50 years ago, at least the work of the shrine was established over 50 years ago and more formally entered later on. But we realized that we needed to address the great brain stain that many of us have suffered from. They call it brainwashing, but I've always said to wash something is to clean it. Our brains have been stained by the wrong information. We have become addicted to belief, even though the book that most of us was brought up on tell us that my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. And I want to emphasize that because surely we have a lot of belief, but little knowledge. And so I decided to spearhead the application of these 42 new covenants of Ma'at. And it was just not my doing. I solicited the input of various shrine keepers, shrine members, and temple keepers. In here you will find the gifts given to us by the Temple of Anu. If I'm not mistaken, Brother Sanjeti had something to say about these likewise. And even some of our detractors up in the conscious community in Harlem, who now has a problem with us wearing white, made a contribution to the 42 new covenants of Ma'at. So I would like to just say that tonight we're going to highlight specific ones, but before I begin that, let's begin with the ancestral gift of the 42 covenants of Ma'at, which is going to be presented by Seshur Sanjeti. So now I toss it over to you, my beloved brother. Can you hear me? Okay.
All right. Yep. Just find my unmute button. All right. Duau, Baba Haru, Ankh Ma'at, us to you. And that is how we give respect to our priests of the Kemetic legacy in in this modern day where we're reconstructing it using African principles. We give respect and honor to all African traditions. There's no competition, because there's this thing where, people say, oh, y'all not from Egypt. Y'all, it's silliness and very divisive. And in the spirit of Shekin to Job, Shekin to Diop, the culture unity of Black Africa. So, when we look at Kemet, we're looking at, of course, an ancient African civilization in which we still have records for, and we can use that to help us with comparisons to weed out the influences of the Abrahamic traditions. Because, see, once the Abrahamic traditions come into play, things start to get mixed. So how do we differentiate? Well, what part of, say, Yoruba culture is influenced by Islam, okay, that may have made its way into these spiritual practices? How do we weed that out? We look at other cultures in West Africa, Central, South Africa, but mostly, North and West Africa, Central Africa, and East. How do we find out, well, what's characteristically African of that culture without Christianity and Islam? One of the ways that we can do that is you use comparisons. You find out what the mother tongue is, what the mother culture is. Find records in which, again, we have Kemet to help us with that. You do the comparisons, and that helps us. Now, that's not end all be all, because there's other things that you can do. You can compare, let's say, the Akon tradition with, say, Sheshe Legba. Find out what they have in common. You could do that with traditions in Central Africa. Find out what they have in common. The Sangoma tradition in South Africa. Find out what they have in common. Let's say with some cultures in Central Africa or in the Congo. You can look at traditions coming out of Benin. The Vodou tradition, which later becomes Voodoo. Okay, when it comes over to the Caribbean, South America, Central and North America. Find out what those commonalities are. So, here, we discuss, okay, what is the basis of the 42? What is that basis? My conversation is going to be, all right, we're going to look at the title of Pertum Haru, give you a really surface intro, or contribute to the intro, because most of us, we're familiar with it. So we may come at it from a slightly different angle. I'm not going to go real heavy into all of the 42. I'm going to pinpoint one specific one that will encompass the rest of them because we're going to have more conversations on this. Because if it went through all the 42, we'll be here for 5 hours.
That's for sure.
So, yeah. So okay. Let's shave it down. We're going to focus on. I'm going to give you one specific one, and then we'll give a little bit of language. You can't have me without a little bit of language. And then Barbara. And then after that, then we're going to hand it over to Barbara Rue, and she's going to talk about the new covenants, which is a 42 declarations of innocence, or really just saying I shall not, or I have not, etc., up to today's time, and how we adapt for today. So that this is part of the ancient legacy to the living legacy, this slogan that we use in the Temple of Manu. Okay. All right. All right. So how you like that, Sister Seshat? Just gonna pull this up.
Man, this is easy because I'm sitting here with both of you. I know that you guys have it. That was great. That was perfect. Letting everyone know we're not going to deep dive into all 42, but part of what Tuesday Talk is it teaches you how to do your own research and kind of learn. And when you're in this legacy, we need instructions on how to find and learn on our own. So when Sanjeti takes these 42 and does the deep dive, and when Baba does his explanation, that gives you a platform, or like an outline, if you will, of how you can continue looking at the rest of the 42 to do that for your own, for yourself, on your own, rather, for yourself. Or maybe like you're with 3 people, the 3 of you guys get together and say, hey, let's go through this, let's spend 2 months to do this, and we just go over them and we look at it wide and deep, the way Sanjeti showed us, and also with the explanation the way Baba showed us. So I think that that's great.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and pull up this. Do a screen share. Present. How's everybody doing out there? All right. See people in the chat. Present. Let's do share screen. Okay. Let me know when you can see the screen.
All right. Oh, sorry. Hold on.
So, chat, can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, everybody can see the screen. All right, good. Yeah, because I can't see anybody, just the presentation. Okay. So when Baba Haru, Akra Samaj, and myself, when we get together, we like to call it the craftsman and the scribe. So the first time we collaborated and had a talk, it was with Tahuti Films. So when one day y'all get to see that footage. It was a few years ago, and that was ran and sponsored by our brother Haru Seed and his wife Akmarit. Very powerful discussion, and we talked about the Papasani and Pertram Haru. So I'm calling this the craftsman and the scribe too. So this is our second recording of us dialoguing together, just sharing. All right. So the respective temples. So we have the templeofanu.org. Make sure you visit. Then you have the Shrine of Ptah, headed by our elder, Heru Ankara Samad Sapata. Then we have the Shrine of Ma'at, headed by Jabbar Sazi and his wife, Nico Sazi. All right. So let's get straight into it. So when we talk about the Pertim Heru, we know that Egyptologists may call it the Egyptian Book of the Dead. We know we don't call it that. Right? So we know that the translation translates to the book of coming forth by day. All right. So that is the popular translation that we have. But when we get into some reevaluations and we tweak it a little bit, we may come up with some really significant darts and bullet points to come away with. So we look on the left here. You see this sign here, see the R. So that's Re. So that's a mouth. That is a human mouth. For those of you who have taken Medu Neter from myself, Dr. Kediyama, and Ifedishi Juhudimes, even from Sebat Anika, Udjah, many others, you know that is our phonogram, a human mouth. So, and we know that we have in Kemetic writing system, they primarily write consonants. Very rarely will you find vowels. So words are written without the vowels, but they share that common consonant. Why is that? That is because you have people speaking different dialects, different languages, but have the same words, but they're pronounced slightly different. So in order to solve that problem, just use the consonants, because the consonant is the skeleton. We all share the same skeleton, the basic DNA. So that's what that is about. So you have these two different words. At the top, you see Re, meaning speech, utterance, language. And then beneath that, you have another word written the same, but it has a different meaning. Chapter or section of a book. And then beneath that, you see the translation, Re, meaning chapter. In the singular, next to it, you have the plural. So that's, we would say Ru or Rewa, actually, Rewa. But most people say Ru, so that's fine for right now, meaning chapters or sections. But now we could do some paronymy here. Paronymy it occurs when there's two words that sound or are spelt the same or similar, but have different meanings, but yet are combined into a grand theme. So the reason why I retranslated it as utterance chapters is because these are, as people might call them, spells, if you will. You're supposed to utter them. You recite them. That's where that speech utterance comes from, that definition at the top. But yet these are chapters at the same time. So I've translated it as utterance chapters because both are true at the same time. The utterance chapters were going forth into the day. So let's continue with the translation here. So the next one is of. So that's your new, which is actually the plural. So the singular is ne. But since we're talking about chapters or utterance chapters, you have to say new or new way of, and agrees with the plural noun that precedes. You're getting a little bit of grammar lessons here. So utterance chapters for going forth into the day, or of going forth into the day. Let's keep going. What's the next one? Going forth. So going forth is what? It comes from the word pero or parot, because in the singular is pero. You can see the determinative sign. It's that last one at the bottom right. These are moving feet. These are legs. So this implies a movement, a development, going forward, coming forth, or emerging. Anyone who's familiar with the dating system, the timekeeping in Kemetic, we know that the second season is called Peret, which is the season of emerging, or the growing season. Okay. All right. I kind of hear it's a little choppy in the background there. Okay?
You know, I don't know how to stop that.
Okay.
I can mute myself. Maybe if we mute ourselves.
All
Is
right.
it bad, Sanjetti?
A little bit.
Oh man.
All right.
Okay.
It's okay. That's all right. All right, let's keep going. So the next term we have into. So that's ma or m, if you will. So that's the owl. For those, again, those of you taking Medu Neter, you're familiar with this. It means into, within, by means of. So this is into, going into the day. Next one, heru. So that is day, daytime, or even daylight, if you will. So here's what we have. When we put it all together, you have ru nu pertim heru. Some will put the adage on there, im ger, pert em heru im ger. So book of coming forth by day. Others translate it as book of going forth into the daytime or daylight, or we can expand it a little bit more to give us a stronger, deeper feel for what the text is about. Is the utterance chapters for emerging forth into the daylight. Why? Because you have, as an ancestor, gone through the trials and tribulations that occurred during the nighttime, and you emerge triumphantly into the daylight to become one with Ra. So that is the context of the daytime, the daylight. And this is why I translated it this way, because while looking at the culture, there's always this desire to merge with light as you go through your ancestrization process, from the pyramid text, coffin text, all the way to Pertum Heru, which essentially is a lineage text. Lineage text. The ancestor of the Pertum Heru is the coffin text, is the pyramid text. So, and even when you go into the pyramid text, it will speak about merging with the light of stars. When you go to the coffin text, it's all about the merging with the light of stars and merging with the light of the sun. And here you talk about merging with the light of the sun primarily. And this is after you have been judged righteous by the great judge, the Neter Ab, the great, as it called, the great God, if you will, in translations, the great Neter, Wasari, or Osar, if you will. So that is why I translated it as daylight, because you're merging with the light of stars, you're merging with the light of the moon, merging with the light of the sun. So now let's go into the Paps Ani, but this here is a general, going into the Paps Ani general about what the Pertum Heru was about, and specifically the Paps of Ani, or Anui, if you will. So on the right, you see the scribe Anui and his wife Tutu. So you can say it's the purpose of Anui and Tutu, if you will, primarily him, but he's not doing it alone. He's bringing his wife with him because they work together through their lifetime, so that if he deserves it, she deserves and has earned the afterlife to be judged righteous. So it says this: the man Anui and his wife Tutu are depicted on this famous document going through the ancestrization process. The author Wasserman, he says this, and these are his words: Ani was a scribe and temple accountant, an upper middle class member of an extensive Egyptian religious and political bureaucracy. His papyrus will be uniquely personal, created from a collection of ancient spells dating back over 1,000 years before he was born, originally carved onto the stone walls of the pharaoh's tomb pyramid text. And who those pyramid texts belong to? This, the pyramid text of Wanasa, or Unas, if you will, the pyramid text of Teti, the pyramid text of Pepi II, or Neferkara Pepi. So Neferkara Pepi is Pepi II, Mernara, and many others. And this goes back into those early dynasties, the 5th dynasty, 6th dynasty. These prayers and litanies have evolved to wider distribution centuries earlier, when they were painted on the sides of wooden coffins for wealthy nobles of the realm. So this is your coffin text. So you have the pyramid text, and then people began to expand and add to them, and it became more accessible to people. So now it goes to the nobles and people who have a little bit more money to pay for these things. So this, we have the coffin text, if you will, or the book of Ma'at Karu. So the coffin text literally is called the book of Ma'at Karu. All right. By Ani's time, or Anui, circa 1250 BCE, the ancient spells were written and illustrated on rolls of papyri buried with the deceased, or what they call the books of the dead, beginning about 1550 BCE. So Ani believed that after his and his wife Tutu's deaths, this collection of prayers, hymns, hymns, and spells would aid their spirits to be successful in the trials of the underworld, or the duat. that they would then be free to soar through the celestial realms of the Egyptian afterlife. 2014 Wasserman, pages 10 through 11. So this here gives us a like a context of what becomes Pertem Heru. So at the top you see PMH. That's short for Pertem Heru. So these are the selected chapters of the Pertem Heru. The Pertem Heru as a complete corpus is closer to 200 chapters or individual spells, if you will. More like 198, 199 around there. So the chapters that you find on the Papyrus of Anui are selected chapters, not necessarily in numerical order, if you will. So the Papyrus of Anui has 69 chapters out of the near 200 that are actually available. So of the 69 chapters, we'll just take a look at the chapters as emboldened in red. So you have the hymn to Ra, a hymn to Wasari, that's Asar, chapter 30b, and then over to the bottom right, the 125th chapter, we'll take a look at that. So this here is what's called plate or sheet 1A. Why is it called plate or sheet? Because E.A. Wallace Budge, a famous Egyptologist from the 19th century going to the 20th century, he cut the papyrus to make it easier for him to transport it. So that's why it's called sheets, if you will. This is not, it was not categorized that way originally. It was one long papyri. So here, this is the beginning. You see Anui and his wife Tutu. What are they doing? Giving du'a'u, have their hands up. Du'a'u because they're what? They're praising while they bring offerings. Offerings is very common and a staple in African culture. Offerings, sacrifice. What you're looking at is a typical African practice where they have bread, hind legs of oxen, plants, fruits, small trees, etc. You see his wife Tutu, she's holding a lotus and papyri in her hand, etc. And she has a wax cone on her head there, which is fashionable. Then, all right, let's keep going. So this is a smaller view of the same section. So this is what it says. Adoration to Ra when he rises in the eastern horizon of heaven, eastern horizon of the sky, excuse me. So what you see in red here corresponds to what you see in red here, the rubric here on the far right-hand side in the upper. So adoration to Ra when he rises in the eastern horizon of the sky by Wasar or the Asar, because Asar or Wasser is his title now, because he's becoming Wasar. He's becoming that. The scribe of the divine offerings to all of the Neteru. Anui, and he says, homage to you. So that's that Anajarak. Having come as Khepri. So he's saying to Ra, I'm paying homage to you when you're coming forth as Khepri, the evolutionary, if you will. Ever Khepri, who is the creator of the Neteru. You rise and shine on the back of your mother. You appeared in glory, king of the Neteru. Your mother Nut shall use her arms on your behalf in making greeting. The Medu Mountain receives you in peace. Ma'at embraces you at all seasons. You know, so and this is part of the title. You know that up here where it says adoration to Ra when he rises eastern horizon, that's the title, powerful title. So that's the first section. Then we go into sheet 1B through 2A. So you see these images here, and you've perhaps seen at least the Ankh with the arms holding the sun, with Nebuchadnezzar and Aset giving praises on both sides, flanking the jet pillar. And then you have the baboons also jumping up, giving praise to the sun. Baboons actually do that in the morning. That's where we get that from. So where does the image come from? It comes from the Papyrus of Ani, sheet 1B through 2A. So on this sheet here, he's giving praise to Wasar. So you started giving praise to Ra. He's also giving praise to Asar, adoration to Asar, Wu Neferi, the great Neter Ea, who dwells in the Cheni county, so a district, if you will. King of eternity, Naba of everlasting. What is Naba? Instead of saying Neb, because we don't translate this as Lord, because that gives it like an English Christian type of connotation, and we want to move away from that. So we leave it untranslated. You can say Neb if you like, that's fine. You can say Naba, you say Neba of everlasting, everlastingness, who passes millions of years in his lifetime, firstborn of Nut, begotten of Geb, heir, Naba of the Waret crown, who has taken the crook and the flail, the Nkaka. So he's giving praises to the power of Asar. Now we move on to sheet 3. So this is the more familiar image that people will associate with the judgment scene. We'll say, here, this is where he's being judged. Well, kind of, yes, and a little bit more than that. It's a little different. But check this out. This image, remember, this is not the 42 here. This is called the chapter for not letting Anui's heart create opposition against him in the Neter's domain. So when you see this image, that is the name of the chapter. This is what's happening. But when you read the text, it will tell you what's going on. I want to move something around here. All right. So this is what Anui says. And it starts here. You see the baboon here. Hopefully you can see my mouse. Can y'all see my mouse moving?
Yes, I can see it. Look in the middle, guys.
Okay. All right. So right here, you see this red right here? See this red? So this is where it begins to tell us what he's saying. Because, and we'll talk about Anui, because it's facing the same direction as Anui, which it just tells us who's speaking. That's why on this side, you see Jehuti. You see this ibis bird right here, or the hobby bird? That's Jehuti right here. It's facing the same direction as he is. This tells you that he's speaking. Okay. So right here, Jed Meduin is what it says, which means recitation by the Asar, right here. The scribe Anui, right here. And it makes it more efficient because when you can read the text, you know what's going on. All right. So is Jed F. Jed F means he says. So now he's about to speak. And he says, oh, Ib-E or Abi-E. Oh, my heart. Most of you know that the word Ib or Ab means heart. So this right here. And it corresponds to the translation right here. Okay. Oh, my heart, which I had from my mother. So he gives praise to his mother here. Oh, my heart, which I had from my mother. Oh, my heart of my different ages. So what does he mean by that, my different ages? The development that you've gone through throughout your life. Okay. Do not stand up as a witness against me. Do not be opposed to me in the tribunal. It should say me in the tribunal. Do not be hostile to me in the presence of the keeper of the balance. Who's the keeper of the balance? Right here. That's Ampu or Impua. We may pronounce it now Ampua when we use our Bantu languages to help us pronounce the terms. Impua. For you are my Ka, which was in my body, the protector who made my members hail, or my body parts hail. Do not tell lies about me in the presence of the Neter. So what's happening here is Anui is taking his heart. He's being put on a scale and he's speaking to his heart. He's telling his heart, yo, listen, don't be a witness against me. Don't tell lies about me. Okay? You are my heart that came from my mother, that was passed down to me. Meaning the morals and ethics and teachings and spirit from my parents has been passed down to me is what that means. This is an interpretation. Oh, my heart, which I have from my mother. Oh, my heart of my different ages, meaning you've been with me through all my development, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, etc. Do not stand up against me as a witness. So that's what's happening here. And he said, in the tribunal. Who's the tribunal? Right here. All these witnesses up here at the top, you have the witnesses. You have the recorder, the divine scribe here. Of course, you have Abet ready to devour. You have the Neterut, you have Neter, etc. You have destiny. You have fortune, etc. all around. So this is not, he's not being judged just yet per se, but yet it's being weighed, and he's speaking to his own heart. Because your own heart is your mind, your memories. Okay, let's go to the next. All right, now we're going to jump to sheet 31. There's many sheets, if you will, 69 chapters. So we're jumping to sheet 31, where you have what's called the 42 declarations of innocence, if you will. In past, they would say negative confessions, but if we say declarations of innocence, because that's what you're declaring. You're declaring your innocence. You're moving towards being pure, innocent. Because even after these declarations, which is not here, you would say, I am pure 4 times after you've gone through these things and declared them. So the 42 declarations of innocence. And the first one right here on the bottom left. So you see the figures of the Neterut right here in the middle. You go to the far left, right beneath that Neter, that writing, that is the first one. We're going to go through that one. And this particular one is going to pretty much set the stage for the rest of them. Again, we're not going to go through all of these this go around, but we're going to focus on the first one. This is the rest of that, the 42. So we see the 2 Ma'at figures, Ma'ati, the double Ma'at, double justices, if you will. So that's the rest of it. Sheet 32. So we focus here on this one. Not done I iniquity, or I have not done iniquity. So the iniquity is that word isfet. So when we look at the relief here, so this is where isfet begins and ends. Isfet. That's your disorder, if you will. It is the opposite of ma'at. I've not done iniquity. So when you go to the rest of all the 42, it is really based off of this one. You know, I have not stolen. I have not defrauded the offerings. I have not been angry, just unjustifiably angry, etc. All those things are based off of isfet, because those things create disorder in your society. So by maintaining order in your society, you want to maintain ma'at. And the king in any African society is the primary one who goes to the deity of your community, of your country, of your district, etc. Your priest goes to the Neteru, goes to the Orisha, goes to the Aboson, goes to Loa, etc. on your behalf. So here you have what's called Henek Ma'at, presentation of Ma'at. The image comes from the temple of Bet El Wali, Lake Nasser in Aswan, southern regions of modern-day Egypt, Kemet. So there's Usa Ma'at Ras Teperan, that king, that great king, and that's what we should actually call him. But otherwise, you would know him as Ramasu or Ramasuswe. I like to say Ramasuswe for reasons we can get into another time. And he presents Henek to Imana or Amun. So he presents the order that he maintains and keeps for his country because he's the one who's ultimately responsible. He's one in charge of your country. You know how you may hear someone say, I only deal with the person in charge. So he's responsible for the country. So if anything goes wrong in the country, it's on him. And he has to be held accountable. So he presents to the deity, this is how I am accountable. He presents Henek Ma'at to Amun. Now, Emily Teeter, who's the author of a very important book called Presentation of Ma'at, Ritual and Legitimacy in Ancient Egypt, informs us this. The principles embodied in Ma'at, the goddess of truth, are a fundamental element in Egyptian civilization, with emphasis upon tradition and unchanging values. She provided the sense of continuity that ensured the permanence of, and I continue on, of natural and social order. Okay. So what are these values that are common in Kemetic society, but not just Kemetic society? Throughout Africa, actually, because Ma'at is all throughout Africa. It's not unique to Kemet. It is all over Africa. The word itself is all over Africa. The word Ma'at is all over Africa. This here is a selected list. This is not all the countries. This is all I could fit into one slide without it being too jumbled. Right. Even though it appears that way, but Ma'at is all over the place. There's more languages that has the word Ma'at in it. We all pronounce it slightly differently, but it's all there. Ancient Kemetic. Now, this comes from the book, which I referenced at the end of this. It will be Companion to African Philosophy, in which Theophile Benga is one of the contributing authors, and this comes from his chapter. So we have Ma'at, truth, Ma, truth. The Coptic, Me, Me, Mie, Mai. In Ethiopia, you have Moyo. Moyo, that's going to be very important down the line. Moyo, motive, reason. So truth and reason are inseparable.
That's right.
Okay? Truth and reason are inseparable. That's the Kafino speakers. In the Congo, we all know what a Congo is. You have it again, Moyo, life, soul, mind. And in fact, instead of saying African spirituality or African or traditional African religion, we recognize from that great ancestor, almost drew a blank there. All right, so from the ancestor, Dr. Fukuyao, Kekia Bunseki Fukuyao, this is one of his works, brings us Kimoyo. So Kimoyo is about vitalism, vitality. So African tradition is about Kimoyo. It's Kimoyo, vitality, not animism. Animism, religion, even spirituality is not adequate enough to really describe what our traditions, how our traditions operate. We have to use the concepts using Afrocentricity, where we take African terms, African words to describe African realities. Kimoyo is a more fitting term. Kimoyo, and essentially Kimoyo is cognate with the word Ma'at.
Sanjeti, can you spell that? And send Jason, can you put it in the chat? Can you spell it for us, Sanjeti?
Kimoyo, K-I, and put a dot or period there, and then Moyo, M-O-Y-O, Kimoyo. So we have Kemetic Kimoyo. We have Vodun, which is Kimoyo. We have the Akom tradition, Kimoyo. We have Sheshe Lekba, of the Yoruba people, Kimoyo. Sangoma, Kimoyo. Central African Republic, we have Ma, magic medicine, in order to know the truth. So in order for you to recognize and understand how medicine works, you have to understand order. What is the order of these plants that goes along with this ailment? You have to understand order. The Fang language, from the Fang people. One of my ancestral groups, Mie, which means pure. Mie, pure. So when we say Tabamie, to be physically, morally pure, that goes right along with what's happening in the Pertham Heru. Because even in Pertham Heru, the ancestor would say, I have a pure mouth with pure hands. In fact, I think it's a chapter in the 80s, 84, Baba Haru, one of our earlier conversations a long time ago, when you took the time to tutor me in the Pertham Heru, we went through, I believe it was chapter 84, where it talked about being physically pure, where it says, I have not eaten defecation, etc. So, Mia, to know the truth. The self, having self-knowledge. Yoruba, Mo, to know, which is the truth, knowledge. Hausa, Ma, which is something in fact, indeed. Affirmative truth. Mat, in Northern Cameroon, they say genie, but it's an entity that has special knowledge. Nuer, Mat, total, sum up, forces. See? So Benga, he tells us mind is indeed the total of all virtues, all forces as ideals to guide man or people to their personal and spiritual life. Okay. So I'm going to stop the share for a second.
So I just have to ask you a quick question, Sanjeti. As always, I'm sure that there are people who have learned something new. I know I have, which is why we have our Tuesday talk. A quick question that's a little bit off topic. The shape and size of Africa that you had on the slide, can you touch on that for a moment?
Absolutely. So it just so happens that I was able to take the original so-called size and make it closer to what it actually would look like. So it just happened to fit. Africa is not as, it's more elongated, taller, if you will, from top to bottom, more than what's depicted on the, I think it's called the Mercator map. It's actually smaller in the typical map than what it actually is. So it's actually larger. So the entire United States actually can fit inside of the Sahara Desert. Okay? And if we use the southern orientation, that means South African tip will be up, will be top, if you will. We'll use Kemetic orientation, where south is up, north is down, east is to the left, and west is to the right. So hopefully that answers the question.
It
that
does.
Was a big, y'all took it. Good.
I went and grabbed my book,
and
I'm trying to get it out of the spotlight. But if you can see it, okay, this looks a lot longer than what we're used to seeing. It's bigger, it's longer. Here we go. You can see it better now. Is this right, Sanjeti, from what you see?
Yep.
Okay, and so now with the other orientation, Sanjeti, can you speak on this? How I have it held up?
Okay, so that orientation is based on the Kemetic orientation of cardinal points. So the word for south is Rashi or Rashiwe, and it's a word meaning like going up or south, if you will. But the way we know one is up and one is down is because the word for left side is the same word for east. See? Yabitet. Yabitet means the east. Yabite means left. See, the only way you can get that is if south is up on the map, if you will. The word for west or the west is Amentet, which means the west. Amente, which means right side, right hand. The only way you get that is if south is up. And the word for downstream is mahi or mahiwe. It means downstream or north, if you will.
This is why knowing the language is so important. I knew the word for east and west, did not know that it overlaid with the word for left and right. And just also, this is African Holistic Health by Dr. Leva Africa, the great ancestor. And this picture is, this is what it looks like, people. This is what our homeland looks like. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was important to mention that. Go ahead.
Now, for me, so we're looking at the map flat. Now, if you look at the landscape from a transverse perspective, meaning sideways, and you're looking at land elevation, see, when you go to the two origins of the Happy River, or the Nile River, if you will, you have Lake Tana in Ethiopia, and you have the mountains of the moon that you have in Uganda, Tanzania, etc. Well, the land elevation from that area, that region of Africa is up here. By the time you get to Kemet, it's down here. So this is up. When you get to Kemet, this is down. The water's going downstream. So Mahi is down. This is sea level. The origins of the two origins of the Happy River are up here. And it goes down that way. So it's down. So north is down because that's the direction of the water. Because the mountains is way up here. That Lake Tana is up here, and they meet eventually, like in southern Sudan, and go down to sea level, which is the Wedgie Word, or the Great Green Sea that we call the Mediterranean.
See what you learn when someone can read the language. Wow, thank you. Okay, we're gonna return back to what you prepared, but I had to take that little break to acknowledge the shape and size of our great motherland.
Right. So, Baba, whenever you're ready, I can pull up the covenants for you. Check your mic.
Sorry, I put you. Hold on. Sorry, I muted you when your phone call came in. Let me unmute you, Baba. Okay, go ahead, Baba. You should be able to be heard.
If I may, when Sanjay and I get together, he knows that I'm very rebellious because they call me a mystic. I tend to, I don't use the word priest too much. I'm more like an elder in the village. But this whole question of the what you have shared in terms of the directions relating to the position of the map is very interesting, no doubt about it. One of the things that I have a globe in here, and since there are many people here who are saying, of course, that the Earth is flat, and we know that it seems as if the Earth is a globe, right? It seems to be round, and if I was to stand on at the equatorial zone and at the summer solstice and face the rising sun, and I were to straddle, if I were to straddle the Great Lakes, where, as you know, the equatorial line passes at the northern section of the Lake Nyanza Victoria. Now, if I were to straddle that equatorial line of the summer solstice, and I'm facing east, where the Horn of Africa or Somalia would be, then left would be to my north. North would be to my left, if I were to, as I face east, my right hand would be at the south. So I've agonized over this situation, because as an African, I tend to, my orientation is towards the where the sun appears in the morning. We like to call it sunrise, but it's not actually sunrise. It's more like earth turn. And so I thought that when we place the map in the other direction, with what is commonly known as the south at the top, it was sort of I thought it was being somewhat reactionary, because our orientation would not, to me, be north or south. Neither pole would occupy our consciousness. I thought that the solar region would occupy, and the paths of Ra, the paths of the Aten Ra, would occupy our consciousness. And so when Sanjeti just shared the directions, and show that the directions relate also to the position of the map, it created a sort of a, I'm still wondering because I'm not about to surrender my opinion, that our focus ought to be east and west, not north or south. And because we are people of Ra, and I think that our Amenta would be behind our backs if we face east, and so that would be what we call the Abta, or Amenta would be the west, and Abcha would be the east, as we face the turning of the earth towards the sun in the morning. So that's just my little input, that sometimes Sanjay and I, we go back and forth. But I'm really humbled in and appreciative of his grasp of the various aspects of African language, when he shows the continuity of the idea of Ma'at in all of these different places, and he linguistically he employs what I would call linguistic sovereignty by using African terms and comparing African languages to each other. I think that's brilliant, my beloved brother.
Yes.
And so I'm grateful for that tutorial, because I'm happy to learn from some of my students and from younger people. I'm always in school. So I want to thank you for that, my beloved. And I'm sure that the rest of the people who are listening feel the same way.
If I may.
Yes.
So, what I'm glad we're having this exchange here between the craftsman and the scribe. All right, the craftsman and the scribe, because we don't always agree on everything.
That's true.
So a lot of people, people know we don't agree on everything, but yet we have mutual respect.
That's right.
So he'll give me an idea. I'm gonna say, I don't know about that. I won't say it that way, but I'll say something like, well, if I may I offer you this other perspective, because
True.
you still have to respect your elders, whether or not you agree with them or not. It's having tact. It's about having language dexterity and adaptability to get your message across, while you don't have to be offensive. Yeah? And it's not about, well, let me tell the truth. I don't care who don't like it. Da, 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 da. We get people like that, where they'll use truth as a weapon to hurt. See?
True.
See, people get this thing, well, telling the untruth or lying is hurtful, yes, okay? But people will also use truth and facts to attack you, because it makes them feel better about themselves. Mm-hmm. And they feel better because, oh, I didn't even gotta lie. I can just tell the truth. I just want to reveal all this stuff about you and how you're wrong, right? And I can get away with it because it's the truth. Hey, right?
Yeah.
But the intention behind certain things is nefarious. So, I'll never and again, it also goes back to how much you respect the person too. So I respect Bob. I respect Bob Heru Akra Samad Sapata, because we go back to, I'm in my early 20s, and he's had a profound influence on my journey. Okay. Now, even though I've come across different things and come to different conclusions, it doesn't mean all of a sudden, I have to disrespect this man. No, not at all. So again, we have differences, disagreements, etc. But I'm always honored. Bob Heru will call me and ask me a question about a phrase, where's the document, this word, what is this, etc. And then I'll, reciprocate the respect, and I give him my perspective, I'll tell him what the research is, etc. And allow him to make his own decision on how he wants to handle that. I don't dictate to him like, you need to do this. No, I give him what he asked me for, and then he can use it how he sees fit. And that's how we treat our elders.
That's so true. It's always we have a lot of fun too, and and it's always been very, very respectful. But I'm a craftsman, not a scribe, even though I am proficient in the symbology that I use to create the joyery, the art that I create. When I'm looking for a grammatical certainty, I will always give Sanjeti a call and say, how would you say this? And he always obliges me and gives me some guidance in that regard, So I want to thank you for that, my brother. And it continues, and we will always be doing that, because as you know, I have never, when it comes to the research, because we have a lot of talk of scholarship, and I feel that the time has come for us to marry both the right and left hemispheres, that intuition is not something that we ought to discard because it comes from the right hemisphere of the brain, the feminine side. As an artist, we find ourselves tapping into both hemispheres simultaneously, because it's on the right side the ideas are contemplated, and it's on the left that they're executed. So that's something that I continue to use. But when I'm looking for grammatical certainty, I will always go to a scribe, and Sanjeti is a very proficient one. So that I want to also say that, and thank you.
And thank you for your craftsmanship. And I can tell everyone here that Baba Heru Akra Samad Sapata, he is truly the son of Ptah. Like he is Ptah. And what he does as an inspiration on how he crafts the art pieces. There is more than art. There is it's history, it's geometry encapsulated in physical imagery, physical objects.
Yeah.
It is the hand of Ptah. And what I learned from Baba Heru is he finds enlightenment in his craft. That's why it's so good, because his heart is into it. He's fully committed in every detail, every piece. He does it 100%. And the way that has influenced and inspired me is that when I'm writing Medu Neter, and I'm into the geometry of the signs, the placement of the ideograms, etc., I'm finding enlightenment in that. So it's also a craft, if you will, in the scriblehood. And this is one of the ways that the skill that Heru Akra Samad Sapata has enlightened me, because I've watched him, go into the craft. Now, to the onlooker, oh, that looks easy. No, it's the years of skill that makes it look easy. It takes years to be able to do it quickly. So when you pay us for a service, you're not paying us because oh, it looks easy. You're paying us for the time that is taken in order to do it that fast, if you will, or to do it that efficiently. So, I've learned that skill from Herok Rasamaj, and I apply it to the scribal art in the same way.
Hold on 1 second. I gotta put in. Okay, Bobby, you're unmuted. I was trying to inconspicuously show Ptah, and it just didn't work out because, you know.
There you are.
But this is Ptah. This is the bottom of Ptah. Sorry, my head's in the way. It's kind of distracting. I want to give a background. There we go. Can you see that? This way.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
This.
True. There we are. Uh-huh.
There we are.
Ka, the grand architect of the universe.
That's it.
Right here.
Grand
Here we
architect of
go.
the universe.
That's a beautiful one. That's a beautiful image of Ptah. As a matter of fact, yes.
Go this way.
And
Here
I
we
think
go.
in Tony Browder's book, he shows and he speaks about how the Oscar that they use in Hollywood was copied from
Right.
this.
You can see him holding it up. He's holding it. These are his brown hands.
That's right.
Because his skin is brown, because he was an African. And this is where you see the Oscar was taken from. Look at this. All the way down to the feet being together and wrapped. Okay.
That's right.
And here it is, right here, guys. I finally got this right to hold it up.
Mm-hmm.
And his brown hands are holding it. And here's his brown face. Ptah is darker than me, y'all. Y'all know I'm black, okay? And he's darker than me. All right. And Ptah, and maybe you've heard me say this before. Ptah is one of my favorite. Ptah is my favorite because Ptah looks like a black dude from Philly, all the way down to the beard, y'all.
That's right.
All the way down to the beard. Put on like a chocolate brown black man from Philly.
Yeah,
What?
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Sanjetti's feeling himself right now. I wasn't meaning to say that. I'm just saying.
Southwest. Okay. All right.
All right. Back to the program.
Ptah, the word, listen, Ptah means, like it means to sculpt, to create. It literally means the creator. So to carve, to make open work. Bob,
well,
whenever you're ready, let me know when you're ready and I can pull up the imagery.
All right. So I was asked to speak on some of the 42 new covenants of Ma'at. And as you know, as I explained in the beginning, we decided to create these in order to address some of the bad habits that we've acquired and to keep us mindful of our need to be loyal to our ancestral roots, to our African ancestral roots. As a matter of fact, in the covenants, I spell the word for what is commonly called Africa by Afrika. I use 3 syllables from the Medu Neter. Af or Efu means flesh. Ra refers not just to the sun that we see every day, but to the hidden sun, the sun behind the sun. As a matter of fact, in the Pertim, in the Seshu Merkut, the pyramid text, we constantly see a reference to Ra as the hidden sun, and of course, then which is contrary to to Aten Ra, which would be the revealed sun, and of course, you know the prophet Atnre Akun, or who they call Akhenaten, and his wife Atenra Neferu Neferiti. They were the prophet and prophetess, if you will, of the Aten Ra evolution. And so I spell it Afrika because I think the time has come for us to establish what I call linguistic sovereignty. And what Sanjetti presented tonight, drawing from many African sources to show how Ma'at still lives on in these different cultures, is exactly the implementation and the actual use of linguistic sovereignty, all based upon African culture. Also, the I use that spelling because it is both it indicates a cosmic origin as well as an earthly origin. The spelling Africa, I spoke to a deaf Muslim brother of mine, and he felt that the spelling recalls the farak, which is the Islamic word or the Arabic word for separation. And of course, we do not want it to be separated. And so I use that term, the spelling Afrika. So for those of you who read the 42 covenants that you will find it's the one item that we have on the page of the Shrine of Ptah when you Google it. So you'll understand why I use that spelling. At any rate, to give commentary on, let's begin with number 1. Not do I flirt with ancestral treason by failing to identify myself as African in the Americas and the diaspora. So because right now we have many arguments and apparently some disagreements as to what should we call ourselves. Some of us have embraced that insulting N-word as a word in which we call ourselves. We call it a term of endearment. I wonder if those sisters and brothers who were hanging from poplar trees down south, when they heard that last word that they heard before their neck was snapped, if that could be ever changed into a term of endearment. But African people are very inventive, and we can perform miracles, but I still have problems, I guess it's because of my age, using that word to apply to us. So I use the term African, and as I said before, it connotes both an earthly as well as a cosmic origin. And so we should never be afraid to use that term and to describe ourselves and to identify ourselves as such. As I move down to number 7, because I said we want to do about 7 or 9 of these, just to go into more detail into, not do I protect by my silence the enemies of my art who threaten the peace and safety of my community. Now, by my silence. So you see, are you saying, Baba Heru, that we should be tattletales, that we should rat on each other? Well, you see, this is where a council of elders should arise among those of us who is claiming this ancient culture, because certainly you would not want to go, and I understand why one would be apprehensive in calling the law enforcement when sometimes you may be playing Russian roulette, because some may have a certain political frame of mind that may be right or left, two sides of one coin, and sometimes it may be dangerous to go and make a complaint to a source that you think was going to be helpful, and many times you're going to make the complaint and you're the one who get beat up. You have been the victim of a crime and you find yourself getting whipped by the one that you call to complain about the crime that has been committed against you. So that's the reason why these covenants should be better served if there is a council of elders. And by this time, in this resurrection, this Happy Valley resurrection, there should be formulated not only a council of elders, the Ma'atian elders. That should be something that should be the first order of business. And we may not have 42 assessors, we may not have that numerous amount of elders to sit on a board of Ma'at, but I think it's something that we must put into place so that these covenants can be dealt with in-house. We would not have to rely on calling anyone to deal with our internal issues when one or two or three or however many of us goes against these covenants, or the 42 confessions of Ma'at. So there again, I come back to that number 7. Not do I protect by my silence the enemies of Ma'at who threaten the peace and safety of my community. Now, I would not be against anyone adding to this or making a comment on these as I go over each one. I would prefer to have a conversation and an input from those of you who are listening. Not to deny just that your presence, but to have an input in making this more clear to those who may claim this. And these 42 covenants should become staple. The ones that we have modern and the ancient ones should become staples in rites of passage, which is something that we all should be signing on to, rites of passage again, and making it part of the reclamation of our culture. Let me now go. So, does anyone have any comments to make about that? Not do I protect by my silence the enemies of Ma'at who threaten the peace and safety of my community? Hello?
So, family, I just want to say this is an opportunity for you to have direct interaction with Baba. I know sometimes when we're around him, we just sit and listen. And in person, people just sit and listen even more. And he's like, "What are y'all gonna talk? Like, we're here to all talk." So it's kind of the same thing right here, right now. So, not do I protect by my silence the enemies of Ma'at who threaten the peace and safety of my community. How do we feel about that? Who are the people who threaten the safety of our community? We know that it's the police. We also know that it's some of our own. And so let's have some dialogue with Baba and people in the chat. Just put your comment in the chat, and either I or Sanjeti will read the comment, and then we can get a nice dialogue going on. So I know sometimes it takes a little bit for some things to kind of settle in, but I know y'all have some questions y'all want to ask Baba, so you can go right on ahead and put it in the chat.
Okay. Should I continue?
Yes, please continue, Baba, and then
Okay.
people put some questions in the chat, okay?
All right. Not do I indulge in ageism or tolerate racism. Now, that's highly significant to me. Whenever I'm walking the streets and I pass a brother or sister on the street, and there's a saying that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And it becomes clear to me that that is so true, because many times I would never pass someone without giving them a nod or how you doing, or something like that. And I'm interested really in not just a passing gesture, how you doing? Oh, I'm okay, But sometimes I don't mind a half a minute conversation with someone I'm just seeing for the first time, but it's passing on the street, because a lot of us are going through a lot in these times, especially, and many of us are walking in a state of anger, in a state of disappointment and hurt, and you can we carry it sometimes in our posture, in the way we walk. We carry it on our face, on those frowns that we may have, and so
Baba,
yes.
I'm sorry, Baba. I just have to interject. I hear some static. I'm not sure, Sanjeti, did you hear it?
Is it my
You didn't hear it?
paper?
Okay. It might just be me. If anyone hears some static in the chat, let me know. But if not, I hope it's just me by myself and no one else hears it. I'm sorry, Baba. You can
go.
Go ahead, Baba. You can continue.
Okay.
I think we have a question now.
So it says
I'm sorry. We have Senet Shenka. So first we had Shahid Douglas, who said that, one source of threatening our community could be the government. Senet Shenka says could be family, even we deal with pedophilia, drug and alcoholism. We used to sweep it under the rug.
Oh no,
Number 7.
That's covered in these 42.
Oh, that's coming up.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna read the rest of this because I can't really hear you that clearly. I think it's me on my end. And when you get to it, if you could please address it, then I'm sorry, I can't really hear it clearly. So the rest of what she said was we break the what goes on in this house stays in this house stigma. So I'll tag it and then I'll go to mute and hopefully stop hearing static on my end. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Baba. You have the floor.
That's so true. Okay. Number 14 here. Not do I hold on to beliefs which contradict my hereditary ancestral knowledge, history, and culture. Now, this is very significant, holding on to beliefs, because this is the age of I know. We've passed the age of Aquarius, of Pisces, which was the I believe age. And as I said before earlier, that we have this scripture that everyone likes to repeat, saying that my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. It didn't say destroyed for the lack of belief, even though in many cases our beliefs become our addictions. And as you know, addictions are not easily conquered, because people will fight and commit murder to hold on to their addictions. You speak to an alcoholic about the danger of alcohol, and the minute he gets out of your sight, he's going to go and get one from the liquor store, or someone on crack. You may tell them the danger of that, and they will likewise. But there are other kinds of addictions that we have. We have psychological addictions. We have, I would say, sometimes religious addictions, because of words that have not been properly translated. And also we have addictions to some distortion of truth, and in terms of the placement of certain scriptures. Where did they come from? So that's something that we ought to also address. So what is our one example of a hereditary ancestral knowledge is, for instance, the concept of resurrection. Even baptism was very prominent in our ancient legacy. If you visited the temple of Abut Seshat, the temple of what they call Amun-Ra at the city of now called Karnak, you will see that there's a pool in front of the temple where you can be sure that the ancestors would dip before entering, and even perhaps wash their feet before entering into the precincts of the temple. And so that was I think it was Gerald Massey who said that the ancient Kemites were particular Baptists. So now we have the Baptist faith, the Baptist church, but the baptism goes way back. And even, as you can see on some of the papyri, baptism by the sprinkling of water over the head of an individual. And many times it's pictured as ankhs coming out of the vase used for, or the vase that's used for baptismal purposes. Okay. So, not do I hold on to beliefs which contradict my hereditary ancestral knowledge, history, or culture. And talking about our history, what are we speaking of? Egyptian history? Someone used the term Egypt today, and they were in here, and I said, well, we're not Egyptian, because if you claim to be Egyptian, then you are not giving honor to the name, the ancestral name of the place. And I insist that we resurrect the true name of the nation, the Nile Valley Nation, the Happy Valley Nation. It was Smai Kawi, unity of the two regions. And again, I like to emphasize that this union of two regions is not just about the geographical locations, but it also has to do with the right and left brain hemispheres, something which a lot of us do not give enough exercise to the right brain because, of course, we have been forced in the Western culture to be left-handed. Left-handed just to stimulate right-handed just to stimulate the left hemisphere, the intellect. We deal a lot with the intellectual side of our existence, but a lot of us are afraid to delve into the intuition. Our women, of course, have their intuition going 24/7. That's the reason why you get into a discussion or an argument with a sister, and she comes to you from both hemispheres simultaneously. You're out for the count, and that's why some brothers will rely upon their hands to shut her up rather than employ words to to meet her argument. And that's so unfortunate. And that's another thing. You never put your hand on a woman unless it is to soothe her or to bring her something of beauty. She is not your child. You cannot correct her by becoming her instant dentist and knocking her teeth out because you didn't like what she said. Learn words, my brothers, so that you can defend yourself verbally and with the proper tone. And all of us need to remember that the use of words goes with the tone by which we express those words. We go to number 16. Yes, beloved, go ahead.
If I may.
Yeah, by all means.
So the one about, not practicing religions that contradict our ancestral traditions, the ones you just read.
Mm-hmm.
We should be aware of traditions that would tell us to not honor our own ancestors. That encourage you to turn your head at their burial and funeral, and that you pour a libation to honor them is somehow some type of sin of witchcraft, etc. While at the same time they encourage you to do that for theirs.
True.
See, let's take 3 images. You have one person who is, let's say, cutting a bovine, a bull or a cow, from ear to ear, drain the blood, you may even cut the animal, put it on a pyre, and light the fire and say a prayer. So this person does it. That person will call it, say, kosher meat. Okay. Then another person, would do it the exact same procedure. Cut the bovine ear to ear, drain the blood, cut the bovine up, put it on top of the pyre, light the fire, cook it, pray to the Most High by their own language, and say now it's pure, and it call it halal meat. Okay. Now let's say we do the exact same procedure with a bovine or a bird or whatever case may be. Drain the blood out, cut it up, put on a pyre, light the fire, the smoke go up, you offer it to the deity, and then you eat it, and and then they'll say, "Oh, that's animal sacrifice." Right?
Yeah.
Because, all right, so we do that in Sheshe Legba, we do it in other African traditions. Okay, we do it in Vodun. All right, but when we do it with our culture orientation, it's something wrong with it. But when they do it, somehow it's a blessing. And I'm talking about the exact same procedure.
Dude.
So it is redirecting your attention from your own ancestors to their ancestors to empower them. Because one of the most empowering things that you can do is ancestor veneration. And I've said this on many, many occasions. Everyone on the planet worships one of or a combination of the following: the sun, the moon, the stars, seasons, sex organs, and ancestors and animals. They're in elements. There's no exception to the rule. That includes atheists. Okay. There's no, whether it's atheists, devil worshippers, Satanists, agnostics, whatever title you want, everybody on the planet worships. And I'm going to say it one more time. One of, or a combination of the following: the sun, the moon, the stars, elements, sex organs, ancestors, animals. There's no exceptions. None. Okay. All the deities that say monotheism, etc., Yahweh or Yahweh, and excuse me if I'm mispronouncing it, okay, is connected to Shaddai, which is the moon deity, okay, or a mountain deity, Shaddai, okay. All these the different names in the biblical narrative, those different Canaanite gods. El is a Canaanite deity. I've seen a statue of El in the Oriental Institute of Chicago. So I've seen an image of El, the God of the Bible, in Oriental Institute of Chicago Museum. Okay, so we can dead that conversation. Allah was the moon god, and Allah had a wife a lot. Okay, it mentions it in the Quran, and we know from history. So Allah was the moon god. Case closed. Next. Okay. We know the image, the European image of Jesus Christ. We all know that comes from, you know, Zeus, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, Zeus was deity of storms and throwing lightning bolts. Okay, there's no exception to the rule whatsoever. Now, we respect people's religion. Okay, respect what you believe. Respect us. You know, we're just upfront with it. You know, we just don't have to hide it. Okay, if it's a moon deity, it's a moon deity. Okay. No, we don't worship the sun. We worship the power behind the sun. And I'm talking about some of us who are in the African traditions or into Kemetic who feel ashamed. Yes, we worship the sun. It's okay. I honor the sun. In fact, the sun, without the sun creates a protective barrier. And again, this is according to astrophysics. This is not religious. It's not my opinion. Has a protective barrier or field around our solar system that protects us from cosmic radiation outside of the solar system, literally. Okay? Again, not my opinion. I didn't get it from an esoteric book that comes straight from astrophysics. Okay? And astronomy, not astrology, but astronomy. So I honor the sun because the sun is literally like a father protecting us from cosmic radiation. Now, I didn't mean to go too far off.
No, by all means. I appreciate your input because we have this this defamation against the ways of African veneration, and yet the same people who will accuse Africans of this type of hedonism, they worship on a Sunday. And then others would react by worshiping on a Saturday or on a Friday. The fact is that early human beings always equated those days with deific principles or forces. You know, like for instance, we have the Friday was named after Frida, okay, who is a Nordic deity. We have Thursday named after Thor. Okay, now. Let's say when we formulated the colors of the day, and we apply the colors with a particular neteru, with one of the neteru, then we find within the day, even though the names of the days here in the West are not original African terminologies. The fact is, if you trace the names back to the deific principle that was copied, and the name changed, it lead you right back to the Medu Neter. Because if you deal with, let's say, Thor, who is Thor? They will tell you that Thor is a Nordic deity who is Lord of the Hammer. What is the hammer? A hammer is a tool. Who uses in Kemetic? Who would use the hammer? A craftsperson would use a hammer. Who is the craftsperson related to? In Kemetic, he would be under Ptah. You know, the same thing would apply if he was a Sunu, or what they would call a physician. Okay, who would be using forceps? Who would be using scalpels? You know, So on and on, we can trace the principle back to the particular deific force that is being honored or venerated. And another thing is that these terms, we find ourselves arguing over English words. What's the difference between veneration and worship? We are accused of worshiping many gods. Well, that's impossible for us as African because we do not, that term, that German word or that Gothic word was not something that you find throughout the continent as a name of deity. Okay, even though Brother Imhotep, he goes back to show. He said, "Well, God has African origin." I read some of what he said about that. You know the brother. He's in the squad with you.
Yeah. Once you're done with that point, I'll clarify. But
yeah, I need to. You can start right now.
Okay. All right.
How you trace the God word as a continent-wide term by which we venerate deity.
Okay, so we know that there are different language families, right?
Yes.
So if we, African people, would you agree that we are the ones who first came up with language, who first articulated speech?
Yes.
Would you agree? So we all agree that speech comes from us, correct?
Okay.
Yes. Do I put that in the chat? Would you all agree? We would agree. And this is something we rightfully boast on this. So which also means if we use that same logic, that means that Europeans got language from us, right? So now let's go into the details. Linguistically, you have what they call Indo-European as a language family. So under Indo-European, you have Germanic, you have Italic, that's where Latin comes from. You have Greek, and you have the other branches. According to the researchers by G.J.K. Campbell Dunn, an Austrian linguist, and even others in the 1930s, going back to the 1930s, they say that Indo-European as a language family comes out of Africa, but it takes shape in Europe. Okay? Because remember, the logic is if we taught them language, if it comes from us, then we can't break the logic. That means that Indo-European comes from us as well. If we say that we are the first people to, the ancestor Runoko Rashidi and many others will say we're the first people to populate the whole planet, right? Then we can't break the logic. That means that we are the first Europeans. Okay? So we can't, I'm not saying you're doing it, Baba.
No, I understand.
I'm saying that we can't do that and then suddenly switch the logic because it feels convenient.
Right.
We are the ones who created Indo-European. If we created language, if we're the ones who first articulated these things, and we're the first people around the planet, that means that we're the first ones to create Indo-European.
Okay.
So, right. But let me go to the God word. Now, again, Germanic, in which it comes out of, okay, we're not saying that the God, that someone went into Africa directly, heard the word, and then brought it up. We're not saying that. We're talking about this is a development over tens of thousands of years. This is nothing that's immediate. See, yeah. So we migrated into what we're calling Europe, okay? The Grimaldis. I think we call them the Grimaldis, okay? And then over time, Ice Age, all these things occurring over a period of 40,000 years. After that, then you have what's characteristically called Indo-European. When they come out of the ice, we transform in those Africans who got stuck there, again, mixing in with Cro-Magnon man and other pre-modern humans, then create what you now have, what were characteristically European people. So we're not saying that I can step on the African continent now and I hear them using God as an indigenous African word. That's not what we mean. We're saying that we can trace it back to Africa But this is over a period of thousands and thousands of years. This is not something that just happened, say, 100 years ago. So that's the clarity behind that.
Okay.
Hopefully that clears up a little bit. But now,
let me inject this here.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I have with it only posits a totally male concept, because the pronoun that in modern usage, when we go to church, we pray to him. We come from a matrilineal and matrifocal culture. To just always invoke the name of a deity that's totally male is a problem if you call yourself of African ascent.
That's a fact.
That is a problem. And you see, there's no getting away from the fact that 2 billion people on earth who come from the Christian faith, my father was one, likewise, use that, the he pronoun, the his pronoun, and never the she. Okay, and to go further, the very people who popularized that Germanic or Gothic word in modern times, they never pray to her, and that name that we pray to in the male vernacular never has a wife, never has. It's not in keeping with the tendency of African culture to be ma'atical, going back to all of those terms that you use that shows the continuity of my heart. You know, we are still, you see, I find that we find it convenient, in order not to change because of our addictions, to hold on and find excuses for holding on to things. When you look deeper in it, it does not comport with African culture to be constantly using that word, or even the other word from the people of the desert, who got rid of all the female manifestations of deity in the Kaaba and totally posits a totally male concept of deity. And that's problematic. And to me, that verges on ancestral treason to make it so popular. I hear what you're saying in terms of the origin of a language, but in terms of its present day use, it keeps us trapped in contradiction to African culture, which is matrilineal and matrifocal. And again, when you look at how it's expressed in the Medu Neter, the earth man and woman who came down from the womb of Nut, their names are spelt with 2 thrones. The throne of the king, As, the R is the I, the maker, the creator of the throne. Why is the king the throne maker? Because when he sits as a child in his mother's lap, her lap is the throne. And therefore, she also carries that lap in her name, Ast, with the As throne, and the loaf, which is a provision for nourishment. Some say a breast, but some say more a loaf. The T is the determinative for the feminine, the presence of the feminine principle in the Medu Neter, as you know, because all of the deities, all the female deities have a T at the end of their name to indicate the presence of the feminine principle. And we don't see that in the use of this Germanic word, even though the D and the T are interchangeable in linguistics. You know, yeah. So that's now, just my little.
It's all good. We agree more than I think we both realize here. So so now to add to even my explanation and what you just offered is that while the word 10,000 years ago may have come out of Africa and went into Europe and then transformed into all the other things, right? The spirit, the character, the cultural character that gives us that word today is different than the long-range origin. I'm going to say long-range origin.
Okay.
So the long-range origin of that word God comes out of Africa, but the more, I would say, the shorter range, in the past few centuries, comes directly out of Europe, and then it carries that cultural character, which is
There
different
you
from
go.
Africa.
Patriarchy, yes.
So,
That's right.
now, while studying Africa, I'm not totally against patriarchy, because there is African patriarchy that has nothing to do with Europe. But it's different than, say, Eurasian patriarchy, like the Maasai in East Africa. They're patriarchal. In fact, some of my ancestors, who are the Fulbe, many people say Fulani, are patriarchal. Okay, but it's not European. Okay?
True.
But at the same time, do we hear about women being abused? So
Sanjay,
yep.
can you explain what patriarchy looks like when it's African in origin? So from what I'm understanding, the patriarchy that from your ancestry, or the people you're talking about now, was not influenced by Arab invasion, Muslim invasion, Christian invasion, or European invasion. Is that right?
Well, I specifically mentioned Europe. So,
Okay.
All right, now, so okay, what is patriarchy? Patriarchy and matriarchy. Arc means, say, head, and it's really about lineage succession. So, lineage succession is where the parent passes property rights of household, etc., to the child. So, matriarchy is lineage. Matrilinear is about lineage, passing down the property and status rights to a child. So matriarchal, that's to the daughter. Matrilineal, that's to the daughter. Patrilineal, that's to the son. Father to son, mother to daughter. Okay. Now, archy is where one of the two has more of a political cultural dominance. Okay. Dominance is not always evil. Now, of course, in our experience, the people who dominate us, we would consider them evil. But dominance is not, it's more about who has responsibility. Now, when we go to the African context, if we say patriarchal, in the African context, that means the man is assuming responsibility for the safety and health of the family, which the safety and health of the community, safety and health of the country. That's what the archy is about, patriarchy. That's why when you look in ancient Kemet, according to Charles Finch, Kemet was a patriarchal society, but it found a balance between patriarchy and matrilineal.
Mm.
Okay, that's why you would hear.
She truly broke with that, didn't she?
Huh? Oh yeah. She's like, right.
Hatshepsut said, "No." Hatshepsut said, "Enough of that. It's time for the ascension of the divine feminine."
Yeah. So again, because see, when you're dealing in the world, and again, let's be real here. If I have an army, and again, I respect to the ladies, but let's be real here. If I have 20 men down there, again, no weapons or anything, and then 20 women over here, and they're going to clash together, who's likely to win that fight? Again, when I talk about exceptions to the rule, or what if men are going to win, okay? Because on average, men are stronger than women by 30%, okay? Again, not my opinion, this is the reality. This is why in battle, you put the men in the front, because if somebody's going to die, let the men die, not the women.
True.
I'm sure, ladies, you want to be protected, right? Yes, because we got standing community saying men are not protecting us, etc. Why is that? Because women expect men to protect. Well, how are we going to do that?
That's
okay.
Right.
Men go in the front to fight in the front, to protect in the front.
True.
Women, you're not supposed to be there. Okay. Now there's exceptions to the rule. Right. Okay. The one-offs, but that's not in your nature. The nature is for the man to go out and die, so that the ladies can, so that you can live, because you got to make sure that women, that children are taken care of, etc., and that we can live on. I'll go and die. You have to go on and live.
Right.
Okay. So that's the nature. So
Okay.
now, as far as responsibility, patriarch is where the man takes responsibility for the welfare. So something goes wrong, it's on him, not the lady, not the wife. Now, matriarchy is the opposite. That's where the women take responsibility for the welfare. So something goes wrong, it's on you. See? So now, throughout
So,
Africa,
so
long
then,
story. Go ahead.
so then, if we are going to embrace Ma'at, then isn't it time we, especially in this happy age, the happy means a twin, it means two. Isn't it time then now for us to introduce Ma'atiaki?
I
Neither
agree with that. I agree
patriarchy
with that.
or matriarchy, but Ma'atiarchy. How about that?
Yeah.
Isn't it time in the
Putting
sake
things
of
back
happy
in
for the
putting
balance to be
things back.
restored?
Right. Putting things back in order. Now, watch this. Dr. Ben, that great ancestor, says, for every God, there's a goddess, and for every goddess, there's a God. Right? Well, what's not as popular, you have Ma'at, which is the mother female deity. You also have Ma'at, which is a male deity. Every single Neter and the Neter has a complement, a gendered complement. So Ma'at and Ma'at are actually together.
Well,
Of course.
wouldn't Ma be expressed as the cubit, that plinth that is the foundation where the throne of Asa sits? It has a wedge, a slanted, and it's a rectangular glyph.
Yeah,
That's the Ma.
that's a platform. So it's
Yeah,
Ma, yes.
Ma. Well,
Yeah, so that's
the Ma of measure, where with the woman it's the Mayat of weight, right? That your heart is her instrument is the scales, and Ma's instrument is the measure. It would seem, because that's that wedge on which the throne of Asa is founded upon. Because when you approach, if you will look at the papyrus of Anui, you will see that slant, which must be at the same slant of the slope of the pyramid, and that's the Ma, or the symbol of measurement, whereas she deals with the right weight. So you have the right measure and the right weight. That is Ma
right.
and Mayat. Yes.
Yeah.
And I agree.
Right. And then going into the platform, see, remember everyone, that every Medu Neter sign, every hieroglyph from Kemet is an object.
True.
That platform is a literal platform that the deity is upon, stands erect upon.
True.
And when you go up, or the king, now remember, a king in Africa could be a man or a woman. Okay, that's a fact, not my opinion. Okay, you still have women kings today. Okay, so because it's a position, like you say, president of the United States.
Title.
The president is not. It could be a man or a woman.
Right.
The president, the CEO of a company, can be a man or a woman. When you say Nisut, that's it, that office. Anyway, so when the king or the priest approaches the deity, they walk up steps on a platform. So when you see that glyph, that's actually you walking up to the deity. In order to get to the deity, you have to rise up. You have to go up on an angle. True. And walk up and be pure in order for you to approach the deity. And that's that platform. That's the glyph that you're looking at.
Too. All right, let's move
let's
on.
Keep going.
We're almost there, right? By the way, Seshat, this is what Sanjeti and I do all the time.
I can imagine.
We're just exposing it today, but when he comes in here to the studio, we go back and forth like that a lot. It's how we sharpen our tools, and of course, right, how I learn what he's learning, and vice versa. Yes.
Well, Sanjeti, the next time you go and you're coming into the city, you got to hit me up so I can meet you there, and I can learn from you. I'll bring some food. We can all eat afterwards.
All right.
That's good. Okay. All right. Not do I rate physically, mentally, or spiritually the body, mind, or spirit of any woman, man, or child. That's a very heavy one there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's self-explanatory. Not do I chemically alter my skin complexion or hair texture. That's another one. Where we show pride in how we are made. I don't. That's then we have, and somebody was, well, what about wigs? Well, that was part of our culture, um, and as you know, the modern man has used wigs as part of the expression, I guess, of Ma'at, the divine feminine. In many of the courts in England, they wear powdered wigs. And of course, those countries that are colonized by French and the British, likewise, even on Africa today, they wear these wigs. But we see that that was part of the dress code of the ancient people of the Nile, likewise. So, but of course, the wigs were made of some of the wigs were made from the hair of the individual that was fashioned into these wear for the head that were literally air conditioned because they didn't sit directly on the scalp. There was a certain amount of space between the wig and the scalp that allowed it to be air conditioned to breathe. Okay, we have the last three here quickly. Not do I fail to support with my economic power farmers, gardeners, health practitioners, artists, entrepreneurs, builders, craftswomen, and men of my community. And as you know, that is something that has upended our economic viability because our dollars, our money does not circulate too often within our community. That's the reason why I don't know why these people are so afraid to offer reparations, because it'll surely boost their economy. You get your check on Friday night, and you can't wait until the banks open, but you can now deposit it and have immediate use of it, and it'll boost the economy. The way, even unfortunately, the COVID, as we stayed home, we spent more money at home than we would ordinarily. And so that's amazing to me why they have this problem. They're going to get it right back because of how we are conditioned to try to buy our status with cars and torn up jeans that cost $250 a pair, and sneakers that cost as much as a small car. So that's a problem.
I want to jump in and say and make a few comments on this. First, I
True.
want to go back to the people who bleach and straighten their hair and stuff like that. So, to be really brief, I had my first relaxer at 13. I made it very clear to the person who was relaxing my hair that I wanted my hair to continue to grow out of my scalp the way that it does. I made it very clear that I did not want my hair to grow out of my head straight. And she made it clear to me that it won't. And then I asked her, why is it a perm? And she said, just because the hair that gets relaxed is permanently straight, but my hair will grow out of my head the way that it does. So what is that cross section of getting the relaxer, but not wanting it to grow out of my head straight? That's the cross section of my parents raising me, my mom wearing an afro during my formative years, and for, I think till middle school, I don't know, but for a significant part of my upbringing. And with the intersection of the programming and brainwashing to bolster the creation of white beauty standards for everyone. White beauty standards are for white people. Those are their standards based upon their complexion, their features, their skin color, their hair. That's for them. It's not for us. And it takes a brown Jesus that's been made white. It takes Santa Claus. Those are your two savior archetypes. It takes fairy tales with Goldilocks and the lady who was running and she lost Cinderella, and just all the fairy tales that my parents didn't read to me. So I'm struggling a little bit to remember, but they were all white women who fell and got rescued, right? We see all these pictures, we have all these models. So it's sound bite, sound bite, sound bite, visual bite, visual bite, visual bite, to program you, to make you think that your brown skin, to which the sun makes love to your skin when you go to Egypt. Because I went and my little caramel complexion was chocolate brown and your girl was fine. Okay.
The same thing happened with me.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't burn. It felt great. And I look good. I'm going to find that picture and post it. Okay. We have hair that is active with the sun. Our hair, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the only thing that I know that grows against gravity, up and out and down. And it's natural. Other human beings can't do that. We do that. Why do we get carded at 40 and 50? Okay. So to not want that is because of programming. And the programming has to continue, because every time a little African child is born, he or she is born loving themselves, because that's natural and instinctive. And it takes consistent, persistent programming to make people not want to love themselves.
True.
So the next time you look at yourself, you see your features, your hair, whatever, and you want to change that, just stop for a moment and say to yourself out loud, that is programming, that is natural. That is not natural to me to not love what I see. Self-preservation is instinctive. Everything alive self-preserves to the best of their ability. So I definitely wanted to address that. And I also want to say this. If you ever get a chance to go on a trip to Kemetic, bring your shea butter or buy some there, and let your hair be natural so that your hair can interact with the sun. Because until that, maybe not just that experience, but let me say it in the affirmative, that experience will awaken whatever in you has been put to sleep by this persistent programming and brainwashing. And once you have an experience like that there or someplace else, ain't no going back. You begin to open up and love yourself, and you will realize bleaching and all that is just, it's damaging to the soul.
That's true. Okay, give thanks.
Wow.
The second thing, really quick, integration destroyed our economic base. With the combination of taking our men out of the home and incarcerating the ones that were not, it broke up our unit, and integration displaced our unit. No one integrates. No one's expected to integrate except for Black people. There's no name for it when other people are separate and clustered. We just call it Chinatown, or we call it Little Italy, or we call it Koreatown, or we call it Little Poland, or we call it whatever. But when Black people get together, it's a problem. You're segregating. That's racist. This and the third. No, it is yet again deliberately trying to separate and displace our base. We are a powerful economic base. We just ain't giving it to ourselves. That's why we don't feel it and don't know it. Okay, so. Working towards recognizing this family unit with the woman and the man and the children living in your community, owning your own buildings and businesses, is what we have to get back to. Tuesday Talk, we talk about Kemetic spirituality, African spirituality, and Pan-Africanism. And for any of you who know me personally, or you've been watching for 3 years, you know I'm a Pan-African at my core. Okay? So I just wanted to address those two things. Be Black and proud, and get your community back. Mike.
I would say this too, while you're at it, I've always wondered, my father considered himself a Pan-Africanist. He did follow Marcus Garvey. But one of the things that has concerned me, I think the time has come in establishing, as Sanjetti has so aptly demonstrated, what I call linguistic sovereignty. And I would like to replace the Latin word pan, which means all, with the Kemetic term nebu, or nebu, which means all in our language. So nebu africanu would be nice sound. And when we say pan, I said, if we are going to focus on it should all be of one cloth. If you're talking about recognizing yourselves as African wherever you may be on this planet, then why not use a African term? Now, of course, Sanjay is going to say, well, we can trace the word pan thousands of years
Oh, see.
to
And he
yeah.
gonna already have a slide ready. He's like, wait, hold on. Here's a slide. He's gonna pull it out of his shirt and then, right.
Well, anyway, listen, let's complete this here. And then I will open up for us to just finish. Not do I feed with my economic power or tides the treasury of racist businesses or fundamentalist misogynistic religions. That's a number 35. And that's, someone told me that in our community, the church is the biggest business, bigger than anything else that we have in the community. And I don't know if we can even call, our neighborhoods have been so gentrified, there's no such thing as community anymore, but the church does provide a semblance of communion, which could be called a community. And so that's something that, but what are we paying for when we put our money in the tide? The continuity of our brain stain with a totally patriarchal concept of deity that denies the balance of the feminine side by side with the masculine as it did exist in our culture. And I have, my concern is this, what I refer to as ecclesiastical polyandry, where our women have 3 husbands, where the one that's left at home watching TV at the football game or basketball game, and she goes to give her soul, and that man with the football is at home looking at TV and at these games, and she leaves that one who has her body and goes to give her soul to someone who doesn't look like the one she left at home, and then the one who is telling her that the one who don't look like her husband is going to save her soul gets her money. So we have this situation where there is what I have termed ecclesiastical polyandry. But when the African man speaks about polygamy, everybody starts frothing at the mouth. And of course, the only solution is that he would then partake in illegamy, jumping from one bed to the next without any responsibility for what he's just left. So that's something else that I think we ought to begin to address, because it's been destroying our whatever semblance of community and family life that we have, because all of these divided loyalties, that you give your body to one, your soul to another, and your money to another. And meanwhile, that one who is looking at TV, when he's working, he's bringing home what's needed to put food in the refrigerator or food on the table. And when you sit and you pray, he is not considered to be the provider. And that is also part of the breakdown of the family. So, are we almost done here? Any comments on that?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I think you have 38 and 42
38,
left.
yes. Not do I display in my home, school or place of worship images of spiritual teachers or prophets contrary to their true cultural, ethnic, or geographical origin. Now that's a biggie right there. And so that's something that we ought to begin to also look at, because you mentioned, Seshat, of Yeshua being, even the name has been changed. You see, people change names in order to own something. Okay, he was not Latin, so therefore, why are you calling this prophet, who, according to the story, was schooled in his infancy in his young years in the Ankh temples of Kemet. All right, and so that's also problematic. Yet if those ministers who come into consciousness of the contradiction, if they try to take that picture off the wall, the women in the church would have a fit. And this has happened to more than one preacher who has come into the consciousness of the time for us to show a Savior in our own image. And we go to this excuse, well, it doesn't matter what color he was. I beg your pardon? When you are being persecuted because of this solar robe that you wear, you're going to tell me it doesn't matter when you have been suffering all types of indignities because of this, what we call this fatal skin that we carry? Something has to shift about that. So therefore, that's one of the reasons why that was created, in order to have us think about what we're doing by placing images of deity that don't look like us, because it translates down into your everyday life.
That's
And
right.
if you doubt me, I speak to many entrepreneurs, and they say that the most difficult time they have is with some of their own customers and some of their own employees. That employees are trained to snap and to salute and to click heels when Massa gives directives, but when their own is the boss, then he has or she has problems getting compliance to what he wants or she wants done. And so many entrepreneurs I've spoken to say the same thing over and over and over. And that's a sickness among us as a people. So therefore, and we know that that also comes from the labels that we have embraced. We have embraced the word black as a thing that covers us all, when the fact is that among the various people who use that term, to we have just, once again, we have accepted a label that has been placed upon us, and the sound is not in keeping with the Kemetic sound for the same energy. And that's what I'm saying. A name that sounds like a gunshot that applies to all of us across the field. And when you look in the dictionary, and I would challenge anyone to go into the dictionary that's on your iPad or in your iPhone and look at the 35 definitions of that word that's spelled B-L-A-C-K. And you will see the most horrendous, especially nowadays. It seems as if someone from January 6th has added some of their definitions to that word. And we wonder why throughout the world, people who are labeled with that sound, with that flat, non-resonant sound, are persecuted. Well, foreigners, people who do not speak English, when they're looking to learn English, they go and they rely on the dictionaries to give the definition of that word. And when they see the terrible definitions given to that word, they hate the word, and they tend to dislike the people who claim that as an identity, which only tells us how we look. It doesn't tell us who we are. And I'm saying the time has come for us because we have been labeled Negro, we've been labeled the N-word, we've been labeled African American, we've been labeled Afro this and Afro that, but
all of those words
have never claimed a definitive term to call ourselves. Now, Richard King, who wrote the seminal work on melanin, he used the term Kem-ur, K-M-U-R. We have Kampuchea. In Cambodia, there's a place known as Kamur, K-M-U-R, or K-A-M-U-R. And we know because we know who migrated to Kampuchea, what they call Cambodia. Now, you can see their faces on the walls, okay? And so that's another concern that I have. Meanwhile, the people who have taken the opposite definition of the word white, which means pure, all beautiful definitions, they are lifted up throughout the world. Meanwhile, the people who embrace the B-L-A-C-K word are put down because it's put down in the book that is the Bible of English definitions. And we know that the English language has spread throughout the world. It is the language of diplomacy nowadays, not Latin or Greek. It's English, whether we like it or not. And therefore, for us to just claim and I know that many of us are invested in the word. But when I've lectured and I've asked the crowd to say come, 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 and I ask them to say black, 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 and I ask which gives more resonance. Everybody in the hall says come gives me more resonance. I'm a musician. I play the guitar. I write songs. I had a band, and I'm into sounds. I'm into music, and that's why I believe the was more sung than spoken. And that's the reason why I think we ought to listen to African languages, especially those from the forest, and copy some of their speech patterns and begin to employ more of the labial construct of this tongue and this hollow thing that we call a mouth to get more energy from our utterances, because the Medu Neter, the Medu Neter, as some call it, and I don't argue about the different dialects we use as we reclaim this ancient language, but I'm saying it's time that we show some linguistic sovereignty and find a term to describe all of us, because still in that one word that we all cover ourselves with here in the West, we are different tribes. And we know that tribalism is part of African culture. It's also part of native culture over here. These nations over here were fighting among themselves as we were in Africa. And that's what made it easy to be conquered there and here. Because those who came and studied us saw who were the stronger ones. Which family was the better shot with the arrow? They were the ones who got the guns. And the same thing happened on the continent that made it easy for them to play one against the other because of our tribal differences. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with tribalism, but unless we form federations of different tribes, which would be a way to insulate the body of our people into these groups, then we would have greater success. But we tend to ignore the fact, because nowadays our tribes have become gangs and they do not protect our community. They make the community the victims of their crimes, okay? Because you have on Saturday on every street corner where you see the predominant predominant population is us, and we know, yeah, well, we kill each other, and the others do the same thing. But what is our excuse? Because if we say the BLM that it matters, how come it don't matter among us? And we expect them other folks to care? Why should they, if we don't show the same care and concern? You're having a quarrel with a brother on the street corner over a nickel bag, you take out your gat and you pop, and some woman about miles away gets her baby shot in her arms as she's feeding her baby. That's happened more than once in our community. So this is why these oracles of Ma'at, these covenants of Ma'at are so important for us to employ, because we have to go through, I would call, a ethical rearmament with Ma'atical codes of conduct. And we are going to have a Ma'at militia to help to report the violations to a council, a Ma'atian council of elders. That is the Ma'atiarchal structure that I am proposing, and the Ma'aticratic order that we should be establishing. Otherwise, what are we doing with this divine legacy if we don't move in that direction? Last but not least, now do I pollute the environment, denature the seeds or soil? I went to buy some grapes today and I couldn't find any grapes with seeds. They are neutering the very food that you eat because they have another agenda. Okay, and they're putting it in the soil with these, with what they call the, what's happening in Kemetic in Egypt today, whereby the silt that made that the breadbasket of the then known world, all that silt is now trapped behind the Aswan High Dam, and they are using chemical fertilizers, which, as you know, is impregnated with gender bending substances to turn the inclination of our brothers and sisters from the way in which they were born into something that they're trying to make of themselves. Okay, so that's something that we must address in the reclamation of Ma'atian codes of conduct, Ma'atian codes of ethics, and what they call morals. Okay, and polluting the environment. I see so you're eating a piece of chewing gum. You're going to throw the garbage on the floor. That's disrespect of the earth itself. That's disrespect of Geb. If you knew that your ancestors equated this earth with a divine principle that we call Geb, and even the heavens, they're polluting her too. They're polluting her womb with all Elon Musk. You're polluting Mama's womb with your. You're going to Mars, a brother or cousin. The way to Mars is to go inside. There you can access what you're trying to access outside. That planet will not serve you because you'll take the same shit that you've created on this earth up there wherever you go, because your character has been shifted and you haven't learned anything about Ma'at or practicing Ma'at. Okay? Because as you know, today we're living in an atmosphere where lies have become truth and truth are treated as lies. So that's my bit on these 42, these comments. At another time, we'll address some others when I come back on your show, on this wonderful, and I would like us all to get more people to come and support Tuesday Talk. But this beloved sister spends a lot of her time trying to find people to come on to make this a more edifying program. And each of us who claim this legacy of Ma'at have a responsibility to aid her, because she volunteers to do this of her own precious time. And so I wish that more of us would become involved. So that's my charge to all of you. And with that, I go into silence.
Dua. It's always a little difficult to speak after Baba has spoken because I just want to sit and absorb all of it. But I got a show to host, y'all. So I really, truly hope that, you know, this is one of the episodes that you re-listen to, because we had the linguistic component to anything when it comes to our legacy is the proof of what we're discussing in that moment, what we're talking about, that we're the originators of it, because we have the language that literally writes out what it is that we did. So if we're talking about the 42 laws of Ma'at, which are moral charges on how you are supposed to treat yourself and treat every divine being in nature, and we have a linguist, a master linguist, who is here to prove it, basically, is what it is. This is how we're supposed to live. This is one of the most important aspects that African people, that our Kemetic people brought to this planet, period, and gave to humanity. Take the time to review this Tuesday Talk. This will probably go, we've been in it 2 hours and 30 minutes. Maybe it'll take a few more minutes to close. When you're learning something online or learning something from a video, take a week, and maybe one day, every day this week, you listen to 20 to 30 minutes of it and think about that for the day. And over the course of the week, you'll have been able to kind of absorb what it is that you learn. That's what I do sometimes when I'm really trying to get something. You take it and chop it up and just absorb it piece by piece. Understanding what our ancestors gave us in terms of our moral charge and how to live our life is one of the most important. That is a primary component to the foundation of being a Kemetic practitioner or practicing any African spiritual system, because there are way more differences than similarities and overlap than differences. Okay, so I just want to leave you with that charge. I also want to thank Session Suit, Sanjeti, and Baba Haru, Ankra, Samaj, say Patah. It's such a pleasure to have both of you here to teach from your years of study and wisdom and steel, sharpening steel with each other. It was really great to be a part of it. And I thank you for bringing such intellect and a fact-based presentation to the people. So I hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much everyone in the chat and everyone who comments and who keeps the conversation going and the questions. Sanjeti and Baba Haru, I ask that you stay a little bit when we're backstage so the team, the Tuesday Talk team can say hello to you, to both of you. And some of them are really excited to speak to you, Baba. Okay. So with that, I handed the mic over to Sanjeti and then Baba Haru.
Okay. Just real quick, I'm gonna zip through things like one or two things in the chat. Someone asked, how do you say preach in Medu Neter? It is nothing per se to preach as far as like the word. It's more about speaking. So if you were to speak, that would be more like jet. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's speak. But in Kemet, they didn't have the sermon model like we have today. Okay. They have the Sebayit texts, which are the wisdom writings, the wisdom text. Mm-hmm. All right. And, you know, you do have priests and parents who are wise, but it wasn't the sermon model. So to speak, to teach. So it would be more, so teach. Seba. Seba, verb meaning to teach. Sebawe, Sebawu, teacher, the man. Sebat is the woman teacher. All right. Mm-hmm. So, and Seba is the origin of the word Sophia, which is part of the compound word philosophy, okay, that you find in Greek. All right. So we can get on that another time in detail. And then I'll sing one more thing that I don't want people to get misconstrued. So I made a comment saying that Kemetic or Medu Neter is Ge'ez. That is incorrect. Okay. That is incorrect because Ge'ez is Semitic. The Kemetic language, they do not speak a Semitic language. Ge'ez, Amharic, Amarigna, those languages are break off of Southern Semitic, and it's called Ethio-Semitic. Okay, so Ge'ez is not, I emphasize, is not Kemetic. The Kemetic people did not speak Ge'ez. There's no evidence of that whatsoever, and it's already been demonstrated by Sheikh Job and the Benga in the early 1970s. At a conference, the Cairo Symposium, 1974, that Kemetic, the Egyptian language, and I'm saying Egyptian because that's what they wrote in the book. We go to these works here, the General History of Africa, Volume 1, Methodology in African Prehistory. And you even go in here, General History of Africa, Volume 2, Ancient Civilization of Africa. You go there. All these works, I'll pull it down now because, you know, this conversation, it keeps popping up. This here, this book here, 1993, Theophile Benga, it all demonstrates that Semitic, this one here, by Jean-Claude Mboli, Semitic is not Egyptian. Egyptian is not Semitic. We can go here, Sheikh Anta Diop. I have a whole litany of books here that disproves that. So there's no Afro-Asiatic, okay? I'm real hard on that. There's no Afro-Asiatic. Afro-Asiatic is a falsehood. Afro-Asiatic is a fraud. There is no Afro-Asiatic language family. It's done. It's been disproved back in the 70s. It's outdated information that modern Egyptologists keep holding on to. It is false, and we could demonstrate it. We could debate it. And again, I'm going to pump my ego here a little bit, okay? Even when it poses that, you will lose, point blank. Okay, we got to stop it. And you know, African-centered models. So here you go. All these books here, all of this. Sheikh Anta Diop. Here's his linguistic book, 1977. He already demonstrated Wolof and Kemetic are in the same language family. That means that Semitic is and Afro-Asiatic model is done. It's a wrap. 1977. It's okay. So stop it. All right.
Well, you know, just quickly, I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because Kush, if you accept the Greek term Ethiopia or the Roman term Abyssinia, when the book that you rely on for the name says it's on the temple walls, it's Kash, and some say Kush. In the Bible, it's spelled C-U-S-H. Others spell it K-U-S-H. But the fact is, how come that 48% of the people of the land now called Ethiopia are in the house of Shem by way of Christianity? How come 48% of them are in the house of Islam? You know,
because these things, it's a fraud.
From the house of Shem, where only 4% are holding on of the Oromo, Oromo are celebrating even every year the Erecha festival, which is the preservation of the festival of Het Heru, where they meet and they pour honey at the root of a sycamore tree on the Nile, on the banks of the Nile in around Lake Tana. So you see, the ball was dropped when Izana slaughtered the priests of Amen-Ra and embraced the indoctrination of a Turkish Christian that is now ruling the land of Kush. So ancestral treason is real even on our continent. Okay, I continue to wonder why, when our leaders have been jailed, they always come out of the jail in a suit and tie. Kenyatta did it. Mandela did it. Prempeh did it. What the heck is the Homburg hat? You're going to wave to an African crowd with a Homburg, and inside your brain is the brain stain that you got while you were imprisoned. Something is wrong. We got to shift that kind of thinking and that kind of ancestral treason. I'm sorry to say that if I offend anyone, but you see, at this point in my life, I have to be, my tongue is loose and I'm very honest about how I feel about certain things. So you'll just have to forgive me if anyone is offended.
Okay, Baba. If I may, okay, 30-second clarity. So Afro-Asiatic is a secularization of Hamido-Semitic. When in the 1800s, when he putting linguistics, the field together, when he put Indo-European together, they were very meticulous, they were very thorough. But when it came to African languages, etc., they were sloppy. So when they took the Bible, chapter 10 of Genesis, which is the Table of Nations, they used that to classify languages scientifically. You cannot use the Bible to classify anything scientific. It is unscientific. So they started with Hamido-Semitic. Ham, according to the biblical narrative, is all the African folk, all the African people. And then the Semitic people are the Semitic speakers. And then they realized some of those languages loosely sounded the same, so they just slapped it together and put Hamido-Semitic with no rigor. They slapped it together. So to make themselves feel better, they changed Hamido to Afro. That's all they did. And all the main proponents, be it Joseph Greenberg, Christopher Abet, okay, got his works here too. All right. All these people believe that black people are cursed and they believe that the advanced people in Africa are dark-skinned Caucasians. We can quote it. That's what they believe. The same people who say Afro-Asiatic. I'm talking about the people who put it together, not the minions, okay, not the people who are just repeating it. I'm talking about the people who put it together, the actual scholars. They believe that these are dark-skinned Caucasians, and they say Afro-Asiatic, or if you follow Christopher Abet, he says Afrasian, trying to make it sound like it's updated. It's crap. It's slapped together. In fact, this book is like linguistically not that good anyway. Okay. So there is no Afro-Asiatic. Okay. The update that Théophile Benga gave. He called it Negro Egyptian, in French, Negro Egyptian. And then we upgraded it from there and call it Shinkanda Shikole. Shinkanda Shikulu, Shinkala Shikulu, which means the most ancient of languages. And Kulu is cognate with the word Kemet. And it's basically a Bantu translation of Diop's original name for the origin of African languages, which is Proto-African. It's a translation of that. The update is Shikala Shikulu. And that's when we're using African terms to define African reality.
Besides linguistic sovereignty. Great.
Okay, linguistic sovereignty. There is no Afro-Asiatic. Afro, technically African, yeah, it comes from a North, like a Berber word. Okay, and Asian is actually a Semitic word. Okay. So we're not Eastern per se. That's what Asia means. It comes from the Akkadian word. It means ashy. Look, we're about to be in up 2 hours.
But hey, the spelling of Asia is A-S-I-A. Sia is penetrating intelligence. The in front of it, like you can be amoral. Okay? Without, in that case, A means without. Could it be that the word that the Greeks used that term, Asia, Asia, because they knew about Sia, okay, in our legacy, right? What is Sia? Sia is intelligence, knowledge, okay? And if you are Sia, you are without knowledge, and that's why the Kemetic priest told Solon that you Greeks are mere children, okay? Because of that, because they were Sia, without proper knowledge, okay? Well, so I just wanted to drop that in.
Right. So while I agree with the priest said to Solon, oh, you Greeks, you have no elders among you. I agree with that part. Now I do disagree with the Asia part, but you know how we do.
Well, that's how I do.
Yeah. But yeah, so hopefully, hey, take that to the bank, y'all. There is no Afro-Asiatic. That's done. Okay. We have updated and upgraded information that demonstrates the Africanity, the African character, African origin, and pure Africanness of Kemet, and the relatedness of all these cultures and all these languages. Yeah, it's been demonstrated, and we can flood you all night, which is evidence upon evidence. We will never finish. So, no more Abrahamism. Let it go. There's no origin of humanity in Mesopotamia. That's done. Okay, because that's what the whole Afro-Asiatic is all about. Dark-skinned Caucasians. Okay, which again is racist psychopathy. And there's no Adam and Eve. Origin of humanity between Tigris and Euphrates River. Okay, yes. That's what all that is all about. So again, I respect Ethiopian languages, Ethio-Semitic, but Ethio-Semitic is a branch of Southern Semitic because Semitic speakers went over and invaded in that part of Africa and brought it. Here go Ge'ez. It comes from Semitic people who invaded. That's the history. That's it.
Well, R. H. de Lubbock, he took the cake in Sacred Science on page 171 in a footnote. He speaks about the white Negro. Okay.
So I just gotta jump in and say, we know that's a lie. A white Negro, come on, that don't even make no sense. A white Negro. So, I want to say thank you for coming on. We are at 2 hours and 43 minutes. This is like interviewing. Let's see, Dr. Ray Hagins can go this long. Dr. Jeffries is go this long, and I should have known with Baba Haru and Sanjeti that it was going to go this long too. So I want to thank you guys for coming. Thank you both for being a part of this, and we still have 45 people watching. We still have a pretty decent amount of the original people watching. I guess they took a stretch break, got some hydration, and came right on back. So it sounds like we have a couple of other Tuesday talks to discuss because that topic sounds like it needs to be addressed and dismissed and proven, etc. So we can talk about that sometime soon. So I want to thank both of you for being here. both of you are so loved and appreciated and respected. And like I said at the top of the show, please show your love and support financially with the Cash Apps. I want to thank those of you who sent me some Cash Apps, because I saw the little announcements going through during the show. So thank you so much. And do either of you have any parting words? Sanjeti, I'll give you some parting words, and then Baba Haru, if you could give us a blessing at the end.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming in, for listening and watching with us. I always say I learn more from y'all than you do from me. And, the feedback, I love the feedback. And, keep learning, keep studying, etc. And, I'm here. All right. Thank you. Dua.
Tuo and Tara, I just want to remind my listeners that how I feed myself, I do not really depend upon Cash Apps at all. I'm grateful for whoever, because most people think because I do sacred sa, which I call joy ari, that I'm rolling in cash and I'm rolling in gold. And the truth is that I would like to see more of you out there promoting the works that are done here at the Studio Patar, because this is where you get the authentic emblems. I have to correct many of the so-called cartouches that come out of the land of Egypt, because many of the merchants really do not know the Medu Neter. They do not know what power symbols to use to render some of the names, for instance. And I spent some time correcting those so-called cartouches. So you're welcome to come and get your shenu, in your names in the sacred Medu Neter, the sacred glyphs of our ancestors. So I want to say, Amasu npa nkara sauk su ementara npa nkara awu tuaura maketi paherura. Give yourself to the divine, keep yourself daily for the divine, and do it tomorrow as you do it today. That's our interpretation of this ancient prayer. Tuau Ankh Ma'at.
Ankh and Ma'at, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Tuau and